Picture this: a 7-year-old sits cross-legged on polished hardwood floors, sunlight streaming through floor to ceiling windows, casting golden rectangles across their small frame. The living room buzzes with adult energy, relatives clutching smartphones, cameras poised, voices layered with anticipation. Come on, sweetie, do that adorable thing you did last week. Everyone's waiting. The child's shoulders tense imperceptibly. Outside, neighborhood kids are probably building mud castles or chasing butterflies, their laughter carried on afternoon breezes. But here, in this spotlight of expectation, the child swallows their longing for simple play, straightens their spine, and begins to perform. This moment, seemingly innocent, wrapped in family love and encouragement, plants seeds that can grow into lifelong patterns. The child learns a fundamental equation: visibility equals performance, love equals entertainment, worth equals what you can give others. They discover that their natural state of being, curious, sometimes quiet, occasionally moody, doesn't generate the same warmth and attention as their polished, performing self. This is how the psychology of the star kid begins. Not necessarily in Hollywood studios or talent agencies, but in living rooms, classrooms, and dinner tables, where children unconsciously absorb the message that their value lies in their ability to shine on command. Developmental psychology reveals that children are exquisitely sensitive to the emotional climate around them. Their developing brains are constantly scanning for patterns. What behaviors bring safety? What actions generate love? When do the important adults in my life seem most pleased with me? These observations become the blueprint for their emerging sense of self. When a child consistently receives the most positive attention for performing, whether through singing, academic achievement, athletic prowess, or simply being the easy kid who never causes trouble, their neural pathways begin to wire around this reality. The brain, in its remarkable adaptability, creates what psychologists call conditional self-regard. The child's internal voice begins to whisper, "I am lovable when I am impressive. I am valuable when I am useful. I am seen when I am spectacular." This isn't necessarily the result of malicious parenting or intentional manipulation. Often, it emerges from well-meaning adults who genuinely celebrate their child's talents. The problem arises when celebration becomes expectation, when natural gifts transform into obligatory performances, when a child's worth becomes entangled with their ability to consistently deliver joy, pride, or entertainment to others. Consider the subtle but profound difference between "I love watching you sing because it brings you joy" and "I love it when you sing for us." The first statement centers the child's experience and autonomy. The second, however innocently intended, centers the audience's pleasure. Over time, these small linguistic shifts accumulate into a child's understanding of their role in relationships. Recent advances in neuroscience help us understand why performance-based validation becomes so psychologically compelling. When a child performs and receives positive feedback, applause, laughter, praise, their brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and pleasure. Simultaneously, oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, floods their system, creating feelings of connection and belonging. This neurochemical cocktail is intoxicating. The child's brain begins to associate performance with both pleasure and love, creating what researchers call a reward pathway. Over time, this pathway becomes so well established that the child experiences withdrawal, like symptoms when they're not performing, anxiety, restlessness, a gnawing sense of invisibility. But here is where the neuroscience becomes particularly revealing. The same brain regions that light up during performance-based validation are also activated by substances and behaviors associated with addiction. The star kid doesn't just enjoy performing, they become neurologically dependent on the validation it provides. Without regular doses of applause, attention, or achievement, they experience something akin to withdrawal, a deep, uncomfortable sense that something essential is missing. This explains why many high-achieving adults report feeling empty despite their success. Their brains have been trained to seek external validation as a primary source of neurochemical reward. Internal satisfaction, the quiet contentment that comes from simply being, feels foreign and insufficient because those neural pathways were never fully developed. Psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott introduced the concept of the false self, a protective psychological structure that develops when a child's authentic expressions are consistently met with disapproval, indifference, or demands for something different. The false self becomes a masterful adapter, intuiting what others want and delivering it with remarkable precision. For the star kid, the false self isn't just the occasional mask, it becomes their primary mode of being in the world. They develop an almost supernatural ability to read rooms, anticipate needs, and adjust their personality to match the expectations of their audience. This skill serves them well in many contexts. They often become natural leaders, successful professionals, and beloved friends. But the cost is steep. The true self, with its authentic desires, fears, and complexities, retreats so far into hiding that even the individual loses touch with it. Imagine living your entire life as a method actor who never breaks character. You become so skilled at inhabiting the role that you forget there was ever an authentic person beneath the performance. This is the existential crisis of the adult star kid. They excel at being who others need them to be, but they've lost touch with who they actually are. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of the star kid psychology is what I call visible invisibility. These individuals are often the most noticed people in any room. They're charismatic, accomplished, and magnetic. Yet beneath their polished exterior lies a profound sense of being unseen. They feel visible only when performing and invisible when simply being. This creates a psychological double bind. The very behaviors that bring them attention and validation also reinforce their sense of invisibility, because they know that people are responding to their performance, not their authentic self. It is like being applauded while wearing a mask. The praise feels hollow because it is not really directed at you. Many star kids report feeling like frauds, even when their achievements are genuinely impressive. This isn't traditional imposter syndrome, where someone doubts their competence. Instead, it is a deeper form of existential imposter syndrome. They doubt whether their authentic self is worthy of love and attention. They've received so much validation for their false self that they begin to believe their true self is fundamentally unlovable. Perhaps most tragically, the psychology of the star kid often perpetuates itself across generations. Adults who grew up believing their worth was tied to their performance unconsciously pass this belief to their own children. They may push their kids to excel, not out of malice, but because they genuinely believe that achievement and performance are pathways to love and security. These parents often project their own unhealed wounds onto their children's experiences. When their child wins an award or delivers a stellar performance, the parent feels a vicarious validation that temporarily soothes their own deep-seated fears of inadequacy. Without realizing it, they begin to need their child's success to feel good about themselves, creating a subtle but powerful pressure for the child to continue performing. This intergenerational pattern helps explain why performance-based identity is so prevalent in our culture. Each generation of star kids grows up to become adults who, despite their best intentions, recreate the same dynamics that shaped their own childhood. Breaking this cycle requires not just awareness, but active healing of one's own performance-based wounds. The psychology of the star kid doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is amplified and reinforced by broader cultural messages about worth, success, and visibility. We live in what sociologist Sherry Turkle calls the culture of performance, where social media platforms reward curated perfection, where children's schedules are packed with achievement-oriented activities, and where personal branding has become a normal part of professional life. From an early age, children absorb messages that their value lies in their productivity, their achievements, their ability to stand out in an increasingly competitive world. Schools emphasize test scores and college admissions. Sports leagues focus on winning rather than enjoyment. Even play dates become opportunities for parents to showcase their children's talents and accomplishments. This cultural backdrop makes the star kid psychology almost inevitable for many children. They're not just responding to family dynamics. They're adapting to a society that consistently rewards performance over presence, achievement over authenticity, and external validation over internal satisfaction. Living in a constant state of performance takes a significant toll on the body. The star kid's nervous system becomes chronically activated, always ready to turn on for an audience. This state of hypervigilance Constantly scanning for cues about what others want and need is exhausting at a cellular level. Research shows that individuals with performance-based identity often struggle with what psychologists call emotional labor, the exhausting work of managing not just their own emotions, but the emotions of everyone around them. They become human mood regulators, automatically adjusting their energy to lift others up, smooth over conflicts, or provide entertainment when things feel tense. This chronic emotional labor can manifest in physical symptoms, persistent fatigue, difficulty sleeping, digestive issues, and a compromised immune system. The body, designed for cycles of activation and rest, never gets to fully relax because the star kid never feels safe enough to let their guard down completely. Beyond the psychological and physiological impacts, the star kid phenomenon touches on profound spiritual questions about the nature of human worth and belonging. Many wisdom traditions teach that our value is inherent, that we are worthy of love simply by virtue of existing. But the star kid learns the opposite. That worth must be earned, demonstrated, and continuously renewed through performance. This creates what spiritual teachers might call a disconnection from essence. The individual becomes so identified with their roles, achievements, and performances that they lose touch with their fundamental being. The quiet, unchanging awareness that exists beneath all the doing and achieving. Many star kids report feeling spiritually empty despite their external success. They've spent so much energy projecting light outward that they've forgotten how to rest in their own inner luminosity. They know how to shine for others, but have forgotten how to simply be with themselves. Recovery from star kid psychology is possible, but it requires a fundamental shift from performance-based living to presence-based being. This journey often begins with what therapists call radical self-compassion, learning to extend the same kindness to oneself that one would offer to a beloved friend. The first step is often simply noticing the pattern. Many star kids are so skilled at automatic performance that they're not even conscious of when they're on versus when they're being authentic. Developing this awareness requires patience and gentle observation, like learning to notice the difference between breathing naturally and holding one's breath. The second step involves what psychologists call distress tolerance, learning to sit with the discomfort that arises when not performing. For someone whose nervous system has been wired around external validation, the absence of applause can feel genuinely threatening. Learning to tolerate this discomfort without immediately jumping back into performance mode is crucial for healing. Perhaps most importantly, healing requires finding what therapists call corrective emotional experiences. Relationships where one is loved and valued for their authentic self, not their performance. This might happen in therapy, in intimate friendships, in spiritual communities, or in romantic partnerships where vulnerability is met with acceptance rather than demands for entertainment. For those recognizing star kid patterns in themselves, several practical approaches can support healing. For mindful pause practice before automatically saying yes to requests or jumping into entertaining mode. Take 3 conscious breaths and ask, am I responding from authenticity or from performance programming? Energy audit. Regularly assess your energy levels and notice when you feel drained versus energized. Star kids often give away so much energy that they lose touch with their own needs and limits. Boundary experiments. Practice saying no to small requests without elaborate explanations or apologies. Notice the anxiety that arises and breathe through it, rather than immediately backtracking into people. Pleasing, authentic expression practice. Set aside time each day to engage in activities that bring you joy without any audience or external validation. Singing in the shower, dancing alone, writing in a private journal, or simply sitting quietly with your thoughts. Relationship inventory. Examine your relationships and notice which ones require constant performance versus which ones allow for authentic expression. Gradually invest more energy in relationships that support your true self. One of the most challenging aspects of healing from star kid psychology is that the very skills that need to be healed, charisma, adaptability, the ability to read and respond to others, are often highly valued in professional and social contexts. The star kid may worry that becoming more authentic means becoming less successful or less likable. This fear is understandable but often unfounded. While there may be some relationships or opportunities that were based solely on performance, Authentic presence often attracts deeper, more satisfying connections. People are drawn to genuineness in ways they may not even consciously understand. Moreover, the energy that was previously spent on constant performance becomes available for more meaningful pursuits. Many recovering star kids report feeling more creative, more passionate, and more alive once they stop exhausting themselves, trying to be what others want them to be. Healing from star kid psychology often requires a fundamental redefinition of success. Instead of measuring worth through external achievements and validation, the recovering star kid learns to value internal metrics, peace, authenticity, genuine connection, and alignment with personal values. This doesn't mean abandoning all ambition or achievement. Rather, it means pursuing goals from a place of authentic desire, rather than compulsive need for validation. The difference is subtle but profound. One path leads to sustainable fulfillment, while the other leads to chronic emptiness despite external success. When a star kid begins to heal and live more authentically, the effects ripple outward in unexpected ways. Their relationships become deeper and more genuine. Their work becomes more aligned with their true interests and values. Most importantly, they become less likely to unconsciously pressure others, including their own children, to perform for love and acceptance. This is how generational patterns of performance-based living can be interrupted. Each person who chooses authenticity over performance creates space for others to do the same. They become living proof that it is possible to be loved for who you are, not just what you can do. Healing from star kid psychology isn't a destination but an ongoing practice. The neural pathways carved by years of performance-based living don't disappear overnight. There will be moments of backsliding, times when the old patterns feel safer and more familiar than the vulnerable territory of authentic being. But each time someone chooses presence over performance, authenticity over applause, they strengthen new neural pathways and create new possibilities for themselves and others. They discover that the love they were seeking through performance was available all along. Not in the spotlight, but in the quiet moments of genuine human connection. The child who once sat in that bright living room, singing on command while longing to play outside, can finally give themselves permission to step off the stage. They can discover that the most profound performance of all is not dazzling the world, but daring to be real. In that realness, they find not just healing, but a kind of freedom they never knew was possible, the freedom to be loved exactly as they are.